Hello! I've noticed Myka Stauffer has put up what appears at first to be an apology on Instagram, and I thought that this was a good opportunity to talk about how a narcissist apologises and how an apology from a narcissist is almost always not really a real apology. So let's have a look at Myka Stauffer's apology. She says, "First off, I want to apologise for the uproar and take full responsibility for all of the hurt that I have caused." So this seems quite positive. It seems like she really is genuinely apologising because she says she's taking full responsibility. "This decision has caused so many people heartbreak, and I'm sorry for letting down so many women that looked up to me as a mother. I'm sorry for the confusion and pain I have caused, and I am sorry for not being able to tell more of my story from the beginning." For not being able to tell more of my story. So what does that really mean then? If she wasn't able to do something, then is she really responsible for it? It could be that she's saying that she's sorry that she didn't have the ability to be honest and upfront with us, but I don't get the impression that's what's happening. I think what she's saying is that it wouldn't have been possible for her to talk about what had happened. It feels empty and meaningless to me because I don't think she's taking responsibility for it. So how can you apologise if you're not responsible for something? And then she goes on to say this: "I could never have anticipated the incidents which occurred on a private level to ever have happened. And I was trying my best to navigate the hardest thing I have ever been through." So I could never have anticipated the incidents which occurred. So she's really saying, this isn't my fault because I couldn't have known Huxley was going to behave like this. So she's again giving the responsibility to Huxley and explaining that this has nothing to do with her. Saying I was trying my best to navigate the hardest thing I've ever been through. Well, again, how can you apologise for trying your best? So what she's doing is she's apologising for things that she's also claiming no responsibility for. So that's going to come across, if she really isn't responsible for these things, it's going to come across as so thoughtful that she wants to say sorry even for things that aren't her fault. "I apologise for being so naive when I started the adoption process. I was not selective or fully equipped or prepared. I received 1 day of watching at-home online video training and gained my Hague adoption certificate, which was required by my accredited adoption agency. For me, I needed more training." So let's have a look at what she's really apologising for this time. She says, "I apologise for being so naive when I started the adoption process." So she's apologising for being naive. Again, is that something that you're really responsible for? If you're the kind of person who's naive, should you apologise for being that kind of person? It doesn't seem like something that you can easily change, or that is something you should feel ashamed of. Naivety is something that people have and they can't really help it until they learn differently, So again, that doesn't feel like an apology for anything that she actually is responsible for. It feels like an apology for being a naive person. And in reality, she had been informed that he could have severe difficulties, that he could have severe developmental difficulties, and that he could need a lot of support in his life. So you can't be naive having been informed of things. You can only be naive if you haven't been informed of things and you have been unreasonably optimistic in your assumptions. But when you are told something, you're either going to take it into consideration or not. And if you don't, that doesn't mean you're naive. It means you're ignoring what you're hearing. So I don't think she was naive at any point. I think she was a mixture of two things. I think on the one hand, she was deluded by magical thinking because she believed that whatever this diagnosis and whatever this, all of these warning signs were from these different doctors, it didn't matter because she was a super mum and she could somehow change Huxley into another child. And I think that also there was a degree of it not mattering too much if things turned out badly, because there was always the possibility of returning him. And I say that because she said 3 times that Huxley wasn't returnable when she was first adopting him. So that shows that the thought of returning him was already in her head. So this is another excuse that's dressed up as an apology, and it's followed closely by the next thing she says, which is that she did what she was supposed to do, she did the training she was meant to do, but it wasn't enough. So she's now blaming the adoption agency for not having given her enough training. And you know, that's maybe she's right, maybe they don't give people enough training. But she's not being direct and upfront about this. She's still dressing this up as an apology. So she's being manipulative because she's not pointing the finger at anyone in any kind of direct way. She's just doing it in an underhanded, subtle way. This is typical of a narcissist's apology, that it's empty because the person takes responsibility for things that they're not responsible for. So it means that it's just a manipulation, you know, it's a way of playing the victim. And she's doing that again when she more obviously plays the victim by saying that she'd done what she was supposed to do, but it wasn't enough for her. So, you know, she was helpless in this situation. I can't say I wish this never happened because I'm still so glad Huxley is here and getting all of the help he needs. So if we read between the lines, she's saying that she's not sorry for adopting Huxley in the first place, and that she has done him a big favour because now he's getting the help he needs and otherwise he wouldn't have been. I also know that even though he is happier in his new home and doing better, that he still experienced trauma, and I'm sorry, no adoptee deserves any more trauma. So if only this sentence was on its own, it really could have carried some meaning. But unfortunately, she hasn't actually taken any responsibility for adopting Huxley in the first place. And she's even said just before that sentence that it was a good thing that she did that and that it helped him out a lot. So now this sentence, which could have had meaning, just feels empty again. And this is typical of a narcissist's apology, that it feels real to some degree. There might be, I'm sorry, or I apologize, or I did something wrong. You know, that might form part of it. So you can be hopeful and feel like the person finally cares, that they really do empathize and they really do feel guilty and regretful. But then all of that it goes away, you know, all of that means nothing. They will either blame someone else and, you know, paint themselves as a victim, as Myka is doing here, or they'll suggest that actually they've done something really great. It's just been interpreted incorrectly. So they might blame you for interpreting it wrongly, or they might blame someone else, or they might just suggest that whatever they do, you know, however hard they were really trying for the best, something bad still happened that was completely out of their control. What all apologies from narcissists have in common is that the narcissist is not responsible for what they appear to be apologizing for. I'm editing this and I've just realised that I forgot to mention the apology where they do say they're sorry, where they say it is completely their fault, but they don't change their behaviour. And this is common of a covert narcissist. So they pretend to be really humble, but actually it never comes to anything. And I think that's probably the worst kind of apology, because you really do believe that you've actually had the apology. And so you might even start to heal and move on, and then the exact same behaviour happens again. They're only saying they're sorry so that you will hang around and they can continue with the same behaviour after giving you a brief break from it. I wanted to help so bad I was willing to bring home any child that needed me. So what she's done here is she's slipped something that could have been really meaningful in between two sentences that each take away any responsibility from her and try to paint her in a really good light. So that means that this one sentence that really could have been something that Huxley deserves, and that maybe other parents who trusted Myka might deserve to hear as well, it suddenly becomes meaningless. The sentence before that says adopting him wasn't a mistake, she was doing him a massive favour. And the sentence after it says, I wanted this so badly, I just wanted to help so much that I was naive. In other words, I'm such a good, kind and caring person that I made a mistake. It was my kindness that caused this whole problem. For this, I was naive, foolish and arrogant. I wish so bad I would have been more prepared and done more. I wish the decision to disrupt never had to be made. So naivety and foolishness are again pretty harmless. They're not really things that we can be completely responsible for. It's pretty hard to change those things about ourselves. And as I've said, I don't think that she was naive. I think she knew exactly what the risks were because she was told about those risks from doctors. Then she says she was arrogant. Okay, so there's some glimpse of something here. She was arrogant, as we've looked at, in previous videos. So now she's saying that she is arrogant. But I think that this is, again, one of those things that allows us to have some kind of hope that is going to turn out to be false hope. 2 sentences later, she's saying she wished the decision to disrupt never had to be made. So here she's saying that it did have to be made. So, this is something that wasn't in her control. So that means that she's not responsible because this was something that had to happen. It was an outside force. One of the most common phrases a narcissist will use when apologising is, I'm sorry that you feel whatever. I'm sorry you feel X, or, oh, I'm sorry you're upset. I'm sorry to hear that you've taken what I've said in that way. So that whatever they're saying they're sorry about, they are not responsible for. In other words, it's not really an apology. It's just the words, I'm sorry, but it's got nothing to do with me. So in other words, it's, I am a really kind person because I feel concerned for you and I feel empathy for you, but it's got nothing to do with me. You've just got distorted thinking going on in your head that's causing you to feel bad at the moment, and I've got nothing to do with it. And so it's really frustrating when this happens, because if you're at the other end of that kind of apology, you're being apologised to, but at the same time there isn't any real apology that's actually happening. So how do you respond to that? It can be quite hard. If the person's apologising for real, they might say, I'm sorry I did this. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I upset you. I'm sorry that now I've made you feel awkward. Or if they want to share their responsibility, they might say, I'm sorry, I can see how I have, added to this situation. They're also a way for the narcissist to suggest that if there was something real to apologise for, they would apologise, because they're even apologising for something they've never done. So they're the kind of person who takes so much responsibility for themselves and is very empathic. So, that's incredibly frustrating for someone at the other end of their behaviour, because you're left thinking, well, if you're really responsible, then why can't you just admit responsibility? If you are that kind of person that you're telling me you are, then why can't you just say sorry? Why is it so hard? And of course, the truth is that they're not that kind of person at all. They just want to say that they are. So there's no truth in this pretense. And what they're really doing is they're putting you down. They're putting the blame very clearly onto your shoulders. And it's I guess it's funny in a way because because it's so cheeky, and it's so manipulative, and I guess just really childish. It can be actually really serious, if that kind of thing keeps happening. So if you're in a relationship with someone, for instance, and they keep giving these fake apologies to you, then then it can be really confusing, especially if it does mean that in the end you do blame yourself. If you feel like, well, they're trying to apologize, but they don't think they are really responsible, so it must be me, really. And you never get that validation from the person because they're always blaming you, even when they seem to be apologizing. Then it can actually really be damaging. It can make things really difficult for the person who just wants so badly to have their abuser see what they've done and take some genuine responsibility, so that you, who are on the other end of their behaviour, can see that it wasn't your fault and it wasn't really about you, it was about them. And that apology, that real apology, can often never come. And the half apologies, or rather the fake apologies, can just make things so much worse because they can give you all of this false hope. And they're trying to manipulate you into blaming yourself and thinking well of them, into thinking that they are not responsible and you are. So they're very politely gaslighting you. A narcissist can't give a real apology, because if they did that, then they would have to acknowledge that they'd done something wrong. And they can't do that because they have to be perfect. If they're not perfect, then they have to face who they really are, because they wear this mask, so everything they do has to fit with the mask they wear, and the mask is perfect. That's how they feel good, and that's how they escape the deep inadequacy they feel underneath it. So in order to keep this mask intact, they can't ever make mistakes. And and the difference between someone like that and someone who can make mistakes and is okay about being wrong is that that person feels, who can be wrong, feels a lot less shame. They recognize that they're an imperfect person, and they're okay with that. They're also okay with other people being imperfect. But a narcissist has a choice between being perfect and being extremely inadequate and worthless. Everything that they feel deep down, if they were to be able to connect with those feelings, which not every narcissist can. It depends on where they are on the spectrum. But when a narcissist feels shame, they are under threat of having to face these feelings, with having to see these inadequacies in themselves that they perceive to be there. So in this way, narcissists suffer from black and white thinking. They're very black and white with themselves and also with other people. And I'll look at that more in other videos, because it means all sorts of things. If you're black and white about how someone else is behaving, for example, then you're going to be really hard on them and feel really badly towards them if they do something that you don't like. It's as if they're a different person from who they were 5 minutes ago when they said something you did like. And a narcissist is like that because of how they are with themselves. So because they perceive themselves either in a positive light, when they feel like their mask is convincing people and convincing them because they're getting all of this positive feedback for it, and but then the next minute they can feel deep shame, and so suddenly you know, everything is black and they see themselves in a terrible light. And that's what they're always running from. And it's why they'll project those black and white feelings they have about themselves onto other people. It's why a narcissist can suddenly turn on you and seem to hate you just because you've done one tiny thing that they didn't like. Usually that tiny thing will somehow be bringing up shame in them. Adoption and all special needs are amazing. And I have a ton of respect for every adoptee, adoption parent and special needs parent. All special needs are amazing. This is another exaggeration because it doesn't really mean anything. Why are all special needs amazing? It reminds me of when she was getting excited that he'd just been given another diagnosis. So that while the doctor who diagnosed him was concerned and saying he might need a lot of extra care and support, she was saying that actually she thinks the diagnosis is really great because it means he's going to have all of these things about him that are really positive. No parent is genuinely going to be excited that their child has now been diagnosed as having something else on top of what they already thought was wrong with him, you know, what difficulties he already had. She's saying she really looks up to every adopted child, every special needs parent or adoption parent. But that covers a lot of people. Why would you look up to anyone just because they've been adopted, for instance? And why would you look up to anyone just because they have adopted someone? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. It just sounds again like this, you know, exaggeration because she's trying to be this empathic person she isn't, and she thinks that an empathic person would feel that way. And I'm sorry for hurting the community in any way. Lastly, to debunk a couple of complete rumours, we did not adopt a child to gain wealth. While we did receive a small portion of money from videos featuring Huxley and his journey, every penny and much more went into his care. So again, she said something that could have been meaningful. I'm sorry for hurting the community in any way, but unfortunately it's sandwiched between two things that try to put her in this really good light and therefore make that one sentence feel quite meaningless. Because at the beginning of it, she's saying that she looks up to any person who's been adopted, any special needs parent and any adoption parent. And on the other side of it, she's saying that she wants to make sure we all know that the rumours aren't true about her making money from Huxley. She can't keep the focus off herself. Even though this is supposedly an apology, the focus is always on her and on trying to maintain her image. Getting Huxley the care and services he needed was very expensive, and we made sure he got every service and resource we could possibly find. I'm not going to go into the details about whether she was spending a lot of money on him. I have seen, you know, articles and videos about how she had this massive mansion, that she could afford that after making these videos about Huxley, you know, that she had this expensive jewelry and that she was trying to get the cheapest therapy for him. So, and I did see a bit of a video with Myka in it where she was saying that she was going to get the speech therapy that was $70 an hour instead of speech therapy that was $500 an hour. And she had this watch on that apparently cost a huge amount of money. I can't remember exactly how much now, but $500 is really expensive for an hour of speech therapy. So it would be understandable that she would want to spend less than this, you know, or that any parent would if they're having regular speech therapy for their child. So, you know, and I don't know the ins and outs of how much her new house cost and how much of that came from her videos about Huxley. So I don't really want to speculate there and turn this into a gossip video. I think it's really important to work from facts, you know, to really be sure of the things she really did and didn't do. Secondly, we are not under any type of investigation. I'm hoping to share more from my side of the story soon. So she's continuing to defend herself. She's telling us that they're not being investigated, and now she's saying that she wants to tell us more from her side of the story. Whose side of the story have we heard so far then? Because my understanding was that we've only heard from Myka and her husband. So, I mean, it's as if we've been hearing from Huxley. She's being very focused on defending herself. I also want to mention that mums need a safe place to ask for help when they are struggling, no questions asked. Her aim in saying this was to play the victim again, to say there wasn't a safe place for me to talk about my struggles. And she could have created that. If she'd been honest about her struggles with Huxley, then her viewers would have felt able to share their stories. It could have really encouraged them to talk about the struggles they were having with their autistic children, or with their children who had special needs of whatever kind, or with adoption. But, I saw comments on my channel, under my videos about this saying, from people who had watched her videos and who had felt quite inadequate because they thought she was this perfect parent. So she didn't give other mums that opportunity, I don't think, with her videos, because instead people would have probably felt like somebody else knows exactly what they're doing. They don't have any of my struggles or relate to them. So this doesn't feel like the right place to start talking about them, because maybe I'm going to be judged by her and by the other viewers. But if we look a bit closer at what she's said, I also want to mention that mums need a safe place to ask for help when they are struggling. No questions asked. No questions asked is interesting because it suggests that it's not a safe place if people ask you questions. And I think that is how sensitive to criticism she is. It shows that Myka didn't feel safe to tell the truth about how things were with Huxley. She wouldn't have felt like she could say, we're trying this and it's not working, and we were told to do this, but we don't know how to do it properly because he's not responding to it, or, whatever was going on. She obviously didn't feel she could say that, because if people asked questions about that, why are you doing it that way? Or, well, what about if you tried it this way? Or have you thought of this? Then that would just be too much for Myka. That real deep sensitivity to anything that might resemble criticism will have stopped her from talking about her struggles and actually getting support from people. We love Huxley and know that this was the right decision for him and his future, praying that Huxley only has the best future in the entire world. So this post that was supposed to be an apology finishes up with her saying that they made the right decision, making it clear that she has no regrets and hasn't really done anything wrong. And then she says that praying that Huxley only has the best future in the entire world. It reminds me of someone raising their glass, here's to the best future in the world for Huxley. It's, there's something about it that is in one way suggesting she really wants something good for him, but in another way shows that she doesn't feel that she's in any way responsible for that. That it's completely out of her hands. To be responsible for how things are going to be for someone, and then decide that you don't want to be in that position, to give him to someone else, and then to sort of say, here's to him doing well. If she's praying for that, that's something she'll be doing privately. And if she wanted other people to pray for him, she might ask for that. But the only purpose of saying, I'm praying that Huxley is going to have this, the best possible life, is to say something about herself to us. Look at the kind of person I am. This is what I want for Huxley, and I'm still doing my best for him. I'm doing all I can because I have this prayer that he's going to have the best future possible. I've seen quite a few comments onto videos and have had some emails from people who are worried they might be a narcissist and asking what they can do about it. And we all have some degree of narcissism in us. Narcissism is a spectrum. So how narcissistic are you? I'm going to look at that in the next video. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and I'll see you then.